The massive ships appeared without warning. One moment, Earth's skies were clear. The next, 7 enormous black vessels hung above major cities. Their hulls absorbed light rather than reflected it, making them look like holes cut into the blue sky. In Washington, D.C., military leaders gathered in an underground bunker. Admiral John Carter sat at the head of the table, his weathered face grim as he studied the satellite images. "What do we know?" he asked. General Susan Wright shook her head. "Nothing yet. They're not responding to any communication attempts. No hostile action so far, but they've positioned themselves over New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo, New Delhi, and here." The room fell silent as a young aide rushed in. "Sir, they're broadcasting something. Worldwide. On every screen, radio and connected device across the planet, the same message played. A tall being with obsidian skin and 4 arms appeared. Its face had no nose, just slits and 6 yellow eyes arranged in a pattern. When it spoke, its voice was deep and seemed to vibrate through people's bones. "People of Earth. I am Lord Commander, Zyrex of the Valkyrian Empire. Your world now falls under our protection and authority. Your leaders will present themselves to us for instruction. Resistance is unnecessary and unwise. You have 6 hours to comply." The message ended. Panic spread across the globe. In the bunker, Admiral Carter stood up. "I'll go." "John, it's suicide," Susan said. "Maybe. But someone has to meet them face to face. Find out what they really want." 4 hours later, John Carter stood on the White House lawn with representatives from 30 nations behind him. A beam of purple light shot down from the ship above and a platform descended. Lord Commander Zyrex stood upon it with 4 guards, each holding weapons that hummed with energy. "I represent Earth," John said, stepping forward. "We wish to establish peaceful relations and understand your intentions." Zyrex's upper arms remained folded while his lower ones gestured dismissively. "Your understanding is not required. The Valkyrian Empire extends across 3,000 worlds. Earth will provide resources and soldiers. In return, you receive our protection." "And if we refuse?" asked John. Zyrex tilted his head. "Refusal is not an option, but I will demonstrate why compliance is wise." He spoke into a device on his wrist. Moments later, the smallest of their ships moved. It positioned itself over the empty waters of the Atlantic Ocean, then fired a beam of intense white light. Steam erupted as the ocean boiled. When the beam shut off, a perfectly circular hole 2 miles wide and of unknown depth remained where ocean had been. "That was our smallest weapon, fired at minimal power," Zyrex said. "You have 24 hours to prepare your submission documents." As the aliens returned to their ship, John turned to the ashen-faced world leaders. "We need options." But Earth had no options. Military satellites were destroyed before they could be used. The few missiles launched were intercepted with ease. After a brief and overwhelmingly one-sided battle that left Rio de Janeiro, Cairo, and Sydney in ruins, humanity's leaders reluctantly signed the Treaty of Submission. The terms were harsh. Earth would provide resources and conscripted soldiers. All technology development would be strictly controlled. Compliance officers were stationed in every major city. In a remote laboratory nestled in the Colorado mountains, Lisa Martinez watched the signing ceremony on a small screen. As the head of quantum physics research for what had been a government facility, she knew her work would soon be confiscated or destroyed. "Ryan, help me download everything," she told her assistant. "And then destroy the originals." "They'll kill us if they find out," Ryan said, but he was already typing commands. "They'll use our research to better control us if they get it," Lisa replied. "We were close to something revolutionary. I'm not letting them have it." They worked through the night, hiding data in seemingly harmless files and destroying their most important progress. When the Valkyrian officers arrived the next day, they found only basic research and equipment. The aliens assigned the lab to develop improved mining equipment for their new resource extraction operations. Lisa pretended to comply while secretly continuing her work on a revolutionary propulsion system. Meanwhile, in the occupied ruins of Seattle, Former Marine Frank Daniels watched Valkyrian soldiers patrol the streets. His apartment overlooked what had been the downtown area before the example strike that had leveled 8 blocks as punishment for an early protest. Frank wasn't a scientist or politician, but he had served 4 combat tours and knew how to fight against superior forces. More importantly, he knew how to teach others. They're creatures of habit, he told the small group gathered in his basement. Same patrol routes, same times. They think we're beaten. Among the group were former police officers, a doctor, 2 college students, and several people who had lost family in the strikes. All had fire in their eyes. We start small, Frank said. Information gathering, equipment, collection. No direct confrontation yet. When do we actually fight back? Asked a young woman named Olivia, whose parents had died in the initial attack. When we can hurt them without getting caught, Frank answered. This isn't about revenge. It's about survival and eventually freedom, but first we need to be smart. Their first move was simple but effective. A Valkyrian supply depot used robotic loaders to move containers. Frank's team reprogrammed one to malfunction, creating a chain reaction that destroyed supplies meant for a new mining operation. It looked like an accident. 3 months into the occupation, Earth had changed. Massive mining operations scarred landscapes. Compliance officers monitored all communications. Humans who resisted disappeared. In Times Square, now dominated by a Valkyrian command tower, a group of protesters gathered despite the risks. They carried no weapons, only signs demanding basic rights. Valkyrian soldiers surrounded them quickly. The local commander, a Valkyrian named Drez, stepped forward. Disperse immediately. When the protesters held their ground, Drez gave a simple order. His soldiers opened fire, killing everyone. The entire incident was broadcast worldwide as a warning. Lisa Martinez watched the broadcast from her hidden computer. That night she made contact with Frank's growing resistance network through an encrypted channel her team had developed. This is Starlight, she typed, using her codename. I have something that might help us fight back. This is Wolfpack, came the reply. Prove it's worth the risk. How about a way to disable their shields? Lisa wrote. There was a long pause before the answer came. We're listening. 3 years passed under Valkyrian rule. Earth had become almost unrecognizable. Forests were cleared for mining operations. The skies over industrial zones stayed dark with smoke. Massive ships carried Earth's resources to distant stars. Humans worked long hours under the watchful eyes of compliance officers. Frank Daniels stared at a map spread across a table in the Resistance's newest hideout, an abandoned subway station beneath Detroit. Red marks showed Valkyrian strongholds. Blue marks showed resistance cells. There were more blue marks now than 3 months ago. We hit their fuel depot in Chicago last week, said Diane Powell, pointing to a location on the map. Before the invasion, she had been an intelligence analyst. Now she was Frank's most trusted lieutenant. Made it look like an equipment failure. Frank nodded. Any losses? None. We were in and out before they knew what happened. This was how the resistance operated. Careful, patient, and smart. No direct confrontations, no martyrs. Just constant small victories that looked like accidents or system failures. What about our friend in the mountains? Frank asked. Diane handed him a small data chip. Lisa sent this. She says it's important. In the Appalachian Mountains, Lisa Martinez worked in an abandoned military bunker that the Valkyrians never discovered. With her was a team of 12 scientists and engineers who had escaped the alien work programs. Lisa hadn't seen daylight in months. She didn't mind. Her work was too important. On a large table sat her prototype, a device that looked like a small satellite dish attached to a series of rings and a power source. Run the test again, she told Ryan, who had stayed with her since Colorado. Ryan typed commands into a computer. The device hummed to life, projecting an invisible field. On another table, a small piece of Valkyrian technology they had stolen sat inside a protective shield, similar to what the aliens used on their ships and buildings. The shield flickered, then failed completely. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. It works. But only at this range, Ryan pointed out, and we need to get close to actually use it. One problem at a time, Lisa said. First, we prove it works consistently, then we figure out how to use it. In Seattle, now rebuilt as a major Valkyrian Administrative Center, Kevin Reyes cleaned the floors of the main command building. At 25, he had been studying computer science when the invasion happened. Now he wore the gray uniform of human service workers. The Valkyrians barely noticed him as he moved through their halls. That was their mistake. Kevin had an exceptional memory and understood technology better than most. As he cleaned, he observed, remembered, and later recorded everything he saw. The security protocols change every 6 hours, Kevin told his resistance contact during a brief meeting in the market. But there's a pattern. I've almost figured it out. 2 weeks later, Kevin took the biggest risk of his life. During his shift, he attached a small device Lisa had created to a Valkyrian computer terminal. The device copied data without triggering alarms. When his shift ended, Kevin removed the device and walked out, his heart pounding. That night, resistance members gathered around a screen as Kevin plugged in the device. Information flowed across the screen: Valkyrian ship movements, communication codes, and most importantly, details about their occupation force. "This can't be right," Diane said, reading the translated data. "According to this, there are only about 10,000 Valkyrian soldiers on Earth." "That's not enough to control the whole planet," Frank agreed. "They don't need more," Kevin explained. "Their technology gives each soldier the power of hundreds, and they've convinced us they have millions stationed here. But the most valuable information came near the end. High Commander Vrex, Lord Commander Xyrex's superior, would be visiting Earth in 2 months to evaluate the planet's integration into the Empire. "This is the opportunity we've been waiting for," Frank said. "Lisa's device, Vrex's visit. We can show the Empire we're not beaten." The plan took shape over the next several weeks. Using the secure communication network Diane had developed, resistance cells across the globe coordinated. Lisa's team worked day and night to improve their device and build more copies. The plan was simple, but dangerous. When Vrex's shuttle landed, for the ceremony in New York, a small team would use Lisa's device to disable its shields. Another team would create a distraction. In the confusion, they would capture Vrex, or kill him if necessary. 1 week before the operation, Frank traveled to Lisa's bunker. He needed to see the device for himself and help transport it to New York. Lisa looked thinner than he remembered from their video calls. Dark circles marked her eyes, but there was fire in them too. "Will it work?" Frank asked, looking at the device now packed in a special case. "It will disable their shields within a 50-meter radius," Lisa said. "But it needs to be that close, and we only have power for 1 shot. 1 shot is all we need," Frank assured her. They left the next morning, traveling in a stolen Valkyrian transport authorized for human workers. The device was hidden under food supplies. They passed through 3 checkpoints without problems. They were 20 miles from New York when everything went wrong. At a final checkpoint, a Valkyrian officer ordered an additional scan. Something had triggered their suspicions. Frank watched as the officer's 6 eyes narrowed at the scanner readings. "Open all containers," the Valkyrian ordered. Frank knew they were caught. He looked at Lisa, then at the other resistance members, disguised as workers. With a subtle nod, he gave the signal. What happened next was chaos. Frank attacked the officer while others targeted the guards. Lisa grabbed the device and ran for the nearby woods. More Valkyrians arrived. Energy weapons fired. "Go!" Frank yelled at the others as he provided covering fire. "Get her and that device to safety." Frank kept fighting even as the others escaped. He managed to kill 3 more Valkyrians before something hit him from behind. Everything went dark. When Frank woke, he was in a Valkyrian detention cell. His body ached in ways he didn't know were possible. Standing over him was a Valkyrian intelligence officer named Krell. "You led this group," Krell said. It wasn't a question. Frank said nothing. "You humans are interesting," Krell continued. 3. 1,000 worlds in our empire, and very few resist after the first year. Yet here you are, still fighting after 3. Krell moved closer. Where are the others? Where is the device you were transporting? Frank remained silent. He knew what was coming. Torture was a universal language. You will tell me everything, Krell promised. Everyone does eventually. Miles away, Lisa and the surviving team members reached a resistance safe house in the ruins of New Jersey. The device was damaged but not destroyed. We need to fix it, Lisa said urgently. And we need a new plan. What about Frank? Someone asked. Diane, who had been waiting at the safe house, took charge. Frank knew the risks. He bought us time. Now we use it. They monitored Valkyrian broadcasts. The next day they saw Frank on all channels. He was in Times Square, bloodied but standing. Krell announced to the world that this man was a terrorist and would be publicly executed after interrogation. The message was clear. Resistance was futile. But as Lisa worked to repair the device, and Diane reorganized their scattered forces, they knew the opposite was true. Frank's capture hadn't ended the resistance, it had just made it more determined. Frank Daniels had lost track of time in the Valkyrian detention center in what was once Chicago. Days blurred together in a haze of pain. The interrogation methods used by Krell went beyond physical torture. Valkyrian technology could stimulate pain receptors directly, making Frank feel like he was burning alive while leaving no marks. Still, Frank revealed nothing. He knew each day he stayed silent was another day for Lisa to fix the device and for Diane to rebuild the plan. You are unusually strong-willed, Krell said during one session. Most species break by now. Frank managed a bloody smile. Maybe you're just not very good at your job. The comment earned him another round of pain, but Frank saw the flash of anger in Krell's 6 eyes. Good. Angry enemies made mistakes. In a different part of the facility, Patricia Howard treated injured prisoners. Once a surgeon at a major hospital, she now worked under Valkyrian supervision. The aliens tolerated her because their own medical knowledge of human physiology was limited. Patricia had been passing information to the resistance for months. Small things, guard rotations, facility layouts, overheard conversations. Nothing that would raise suspicion. But when she heard Frank Daniels had been captured, she knew she had to do more. She requested permission to examine the high-value prisoner. He will die if his wounds are not treated, she told the guard. Your commander wants information he cannot give if he's dead. They allowed it, watching her closely as she cleaned Frank's wounds. Don't give up, she whispered while applying bandages. I'm going to help you escape. Frank showed no reaction, but he heard her. Over the next week, Patricia prepared carefully. She stole a key card from a distracted guard. She memorized the camera patterns. She created a medical emergency with another prisoner to test response times. When she felt ready, she requested another session with Frank, claiming his wounds were infected. Once inside his cell, she moved quickly, injecting the guard with a sedative before he could react. Can you walk? She asked Frank, helping him up. Not well, but I'll manage, he replied, his voice hoarse. Patricia explained the plan as they moved, through back corridors. There's a medical transport leaving in 10 minutes. I've created false documents transferring you to another facility. They almost made it. They were crossing the loading dock when an alarm sounded. Valkyrian guards appeared, at both exits. Patricia made a split-second decision. She pressed a small data chip into Frank's hand. This has everything I've learned about their physiology, their weaknesses. Get it to the resistance. Before Frank could stop her, Patricia ran toward the guards, screaming and drawing their attention. In the confusion, Frank slipped onto the transport vehicle and hid under a tarp covering medical supplies. He heard energy weapons fire. He heard Patricia's scream cut short. Then silence. The transport left the facility. Frank remained hidden for hours, fighting pain and grief. When the vehicle stopped for a checkpoint, he slipped out into a wooded area. He was free, but injured, and alone in Valkyrian-controlled territory. Back at the safe house in New Jersey, Lisa worked tirelessly on the damaged device. Parts of it had been crushed during their escape. Other components had overloaded. It's not just about fixing it anymore, she explained to Diane and the others. I think I can improve it, make it more powerful. How much longer? Diane asked. Time was running out. Vrex's visit was just 1 week away, and they had lost contact with several resistance cells. 3 days, maybe 4, Lisa replied. On the 3rd day, as Lisa made final adjustments, a lookout rushed in. Someone's coming through the perimeter. Weapons were drawn immediately. Diane moved to the window and looked through binoculars. Hold your fire, she ordered. It's Frank. Frank Daniels looked nothing like the strong leader they remembered. He was gaunt, limping, his face marked with half-healed wounds. But his eyes still burned with determination. After a quick medical check and some food, Frank shared everything he had learned. He carefully handed over Patricia's data chip. She gave her life for this, he said quietly. It better be worth something. Lisa examined the data with growing excitement. This is incredible. Their biology. They're uniquely sensitive to a specific frequency. That's why their technology operates on such precise energy parameters. She turned to her device, making rapid adjustments. I can tune this to target that frequency. It won't just disable their shields, it could disrupt their entire power grid. Can you test it? Frank asked. Lisa shook her head. Not without Valkyrian technology nearby. The test would alert them to our location. So we'll be going in blind, Diane said. Not completely, Lisa replied. The theory is sound, and we won't get another chance like Vrex's visit. They spent the next 2 days planning. Vrex would arrive in a shuttle, land at the main Valkyrian base in New York, and tour several facilities before departing. The ceremony would include the execution of several resistance fighters, including Frank, who was now listed as escaped. They'll be looking for me, Frank said. We can use that. Their new plan was bold but simple. While Valkyrian forces were distracted looking for Frank, a small team would infiltrate the landing zone maintenance area. Lisa's device would be hidden there, timed to activate when Vrex's shuttle landed. If it works, their shields will fail and their systems will overload, Lisa explained. It should create enough chaos for us to get inside and capture Vrex, or at least access their database. The day before Vrex's arrival, they moved to an abandoned warehouse closer to the landing zone. From there, they could see the massive Valkyrian base that had once been Central Park. That night, as the others made final preparations, Frank found Lisa alone, making adjustments to the device. You know this is a one-way mission for whoever plants this, he said. Lisa didn't look up from her work. I know, that's why I'm going. No, Frank said firmly. You're too valuable. Your knowledge is useless if we don't succeed tomorrow. Lisa interrupted. I know exactly how to position this for maximum effect. No one else does. Frank wanted to argue but knew she was right. Then I'm coming with you. Early the next morning, disguised as maintenance workers, Lisa and Frank approached the landing zone. The device was hidden in a cleaning cart. Diane and her team waited nearby, ready to move in after the device activated. Security was heavy but focused outward, looking for an attack rather than infiltrators already inside. Frank's forged credentials got them through 2 checkpoints. They reached the maintenance tunnel running beneath the landing pad. Lisa began setting up the device while Frank stood guard. How long? He whispered. 5 minutes to calibrate. Then we need to get clear before it activates, she replied. Frank heard. Footsteps approaching. We have company. 2 Valkyrian guards turned the corner, spotted them, and raised their weapons. Frank reacted instantly, throwing his knife at one while tackling the other. In the confined space, the alien's superior strength was less effective. Frank subdued both guards, but not before one sent a partial alert. Warning lights began flashing. We're out of time, Frank said. Is it ready? Lisa nodded, hands still working frantically on the device. Almost, but someone needs to stay to activate it manually now. Their eyes met. Both knew what that meant. Go, Frank said. Get to Diane, I'll finish this. Lisa hesitated, then handed him the activation key. 30 seconds after you insert this. No more. Before leaving, she did something unexpected. She kissed Frank's cheek. "Humanity will remember you." Frank watched her disappear down the tunnel. Then he turned to the device, key in hand, as the sound of running footsteps grew closer. Above, Vrex's shuttle was beginning its landing approach. Frank took a deep breath and inserted the key. 30 seconds, he whispered to himself. "Here's for Earth." The seconds counted down as Frank crouched beside the device. Valkyrian soldiers were getting closer. He could hear their heavy footsteps and sharp commands. Above, Vrex's shuttle was settling onto the landing pad. 20 seconds left. Frank drew his stolen Valkyrian energy pistol. He wasn't planning to survive, but he would make sure the device did. 10 seconds. The first Valkyrian soldier appeared at the tunnel entrance. Frank fired, catching the alien in the chest. It fell back with a shriek. 5 seconds. More soldiers appeared. Energy blasts hit the wall near Frank's head. 0. The device activated, with a high-pitched whine that quickly rose beyond human hearing. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then everything changed. The Valkyrian soldiers dropped their weapons and clutched their heads in pain. The lights flickered and died. From above came the sound of tearing metal and crashes as Vrex's shuttle, suddenly without power or shields, fell the last few feet to the landing pad. Frank felt a surge of hope. It worked. He ran past the suffering Valkyrians toward the exit. He had to find Lisa and Diane. They needed to move quickly while the aliens were vulnerable. Outside was chaos. Valkyrian technology everywhere was failing. Their vehicles stopped. In the streets, their communication devices sparked and smoked. Most importantly, the Valkyrians themselves seemed disoriented and in pain, the frequency affecting their sensitive hearing. Frank spotted Lisa and Diane leading a small team toward the shuttle. He ran to join them. "You're alive." Lisa's face showed shock and joy. "Not dead yet," Frank replied with a grim smile. "The device? Working better than we hoped," Lisa said. "Their entire power grid is crashing. The effect is spreading beyond what I calculated." They reached the damaged shuttle. The door had been thrown open by the impact. Inside, Valkyrian crew members were struggling to stand. In the center, surrounded by guards, was a larger, more imposing Valkyrian wearing ornate armor. "High Commander Vrex." "Secure him," Frank ordered. 2 resistance fighters moved in, restraining Vrex with special bindings Lisa had designed to hold Valkyrian strength. "You dare?" Vrex began, but Diane struck him, cutting off his words. "For Earth," she said coldly. They quickly searched the shuttle, finding something unexpected: a data core containing the ship's navigation system and communication protocols. Lisa examined it with excitement. "This has the locations of every Valkyrian-controlled world," she said. "And their secure communication channels. We can contact other resistance movements, if there are any," Frank said. "There must be. We can't be the only ones fighting back." Alarms were sounding across the base. Despite their technological failure, the Valkyrians were regrouping. Human collaborators were helping them restore some systems. "We need to move," Frank said. "Bring Vrex and the data core." Outside, they met Kevin Reyes with more resistance members. They had commandeered a large transport vehicle. "The effect is spreading across the city," Kevin reported. "All Valkyrian tech is down or malfunctioning." They piled into the transport, Vrex secured in the center. As they drove away from the base, Valkyrian aircraft appeared in the distance, ships from outside the affected zone coming to investigate. "We won't outrun those," Diane said, pointing. "Head for the old subway tunnels," Frank ordered the driver. "We can hide underground until we figure out our next move." In the tunnels beneath Manhattan, they established a temporary base. Lisa worked on the data core while others guarded Vrex and monitored Valkyrian communications using stolen equipment. 8 hours after the attack, Lisa called everyone together. Her face was glowing with excitement. "I've been studying both the data core and the Valkyrian technology we captured," she explained. "And I have 2 important discoveries." She activated a holographic display showing a star map. "First, Earth is just one of hundreds of subjugated worlds. Many have been under Valkyrian control for centuries, The map expanded, showing the vast reach of the Empire across multiple star systems. Second, Lisa continued, I've confirmed that all their technology operates on the same principle, the same frequency constraints I targeted with my device, and I think we can build a larger version. Larger how? Frank asked. Ship-sized, Lisa said. With enough power, we could disable entire Valkyrian fleets, maybe even their homeworld's defenses. The tunnel fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. It was Diane who spoke first. Are you suggesting we take the fight to them? To space? Lisa nodded. The data core has complete schematics for their ships. With what we've learned about their technology, we could capture one, maybe more. All eyes turned to Vrex, who had been listening silently. The High Commander's 6 eyes narrowed. You would be destroyed before reaching the nearest Imperial outpost, he said. What happened here was a momentary setback. The Empire spans 3,000 worlds. Your resistance is meaningless. Frank stepped closer to Vrex. If that's true, why are your soldiers still scrambling to restore power 12 hours after our momentary setback? He turned to the others. Lisa's right. We can't just keep fighting them here on Earth. We need to take this opportunity. Plans formed quickly. While Valkyrian forces were weakened, resistance cells across the planet would strike key targets. Meanwhile, Frank and Lisa would lead a team to capture a Valkyrian ship in orbit. The biggest challenge was getting to orbit. Most Valkyrian shuttles on Earth were damaged by Lisa's device. They needed one from outside the affected area. There's a secondary landing facility near Boston, Kevin said, studying captured data. Smaller ships, less security. And Valkyrian forces there will be responding to New York, Diane added. It might be minimally defended now. 3 days later, under cover of darkness, Frank led a small team into the Boston facility. As expected, most forces had been deployed to New York. The few remaining guards were easily overwhelmed. They found what they needed, a functioning shuttle large enough for 20 people. Lisa inspected it carefully. Their technology is returning to normal outside the blast radius, she warned, but I can modify the engines to resist any remote shutdown commands. It took another day to prepare. Lisa installed a larger version of her device on the shuttle. Frank selected the team, the best fighters and technicians from the Resistance. Diane would remain on Earth to coordinate the ground campaign. The night before their mission, Frank found Lisa working on the shuttle engines. She hadn't slept in days. You should rest, he said. Lisa shook her head. Too much to do. This has to work, Frank. It's our only chance. Frank placed a hand on her shoulder. It will work. You've never failed us before. She looked up at him, her tired eyes meeting his. And if we succeed? If we actually reach space? Then we find out if other worlds are fighting back, Frank said, and we bring them what they need to win. The next morning, their stolen shuttle lifted off from Earth. 20 humans on a desperate mission against an empire of 3,000 worlds. As they broke through the clouds, Frank looked back at the blue planet growing smaller beneath them. For Earth, he whispered. Ahead, a Valkyrian cruiser hung in orbit, its weapons still powered down from the disruption below. Their first target, Lisa, activated her device. Ready when you are, Frank nodded to the pilot. Take us in, fast and quiet. The shuttle accelerated toward the much larger ship. The first battle of humanity's counteroffensive was about to begin. The stolen shuttle approached the Valkyrian cruiser silently. The massive ship hung in Earth's orbit, its sleek black hull absorbing the sunlight. It was at least 20 times larger than their shuttle, and armed with weapons that could vaporize them in seconds. Activating the device now, Lisa said. She pressed a series of controls on her modified version of the frequency disruptor. The device hummed to life. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the lights on the cruiser began to flicker. It's working, Kevin whispered from his position at the scanner. Their power levels are dropping, shields are down. Frank turned to the team. Remember the plan. We dock. Secure the bridge and engineering section. Then use their own weapons to defend the ship until Lisa can get its systems fully under our control. The shuttle docked with the cruiser without resistance. When the airlock opened, they found 2 Valkyrian crew members writhing on the floor, the frequency causing them intense pain. Frank's team moved past them quickly. The corridors of the ship were dimly lit by emergency lighting. Most systems were offline. They encountered little resistance as they moved toward the bridge. The few Valkyrians they found were quickly subdued. "This is too easy," Frank said to Lisa as they approached the bridge. "Something's wrong." As if in answer to his concern, a group of Valkyrians wearing modified helmets appeared ahead of them. The helmets must have been shielding them from the frequency. "Adaptable," Lisa muttered. "I should have expected that." The fight was brief, but violent. Energy weapons fired in the confined space. 2 resistance fighters fell. But Frank's team had surprise and desperation on their side. Within minutes, the Valkyrians were defeated. When they reached the bridge, they found more helmet-wearing Valkyrians ready for them. The ship's captain, a tall, scarred warrior, stood at the center. "Humans," he snarled. "You think capturing 1 ship means anything? Our fleet will be here within days." "Then we better work fast," Frank replied, before signaling his team to attack. The battle for the bridge was harder than the corridors. These Valkyrians were elite soldiers, but in the end, the humans prevailed. Frank watched the captain fall, a look of disbelief in his 6 eyes. Lisa immediately began working on the ship's systems. "I need to understand how to operate this vessel before their reinforcements arrive," she explained. Frank left her with Kevin and a security team, then led another group to secure the engineering section. There they found the true power of the ship, a reactor core that glowed with strange blue energy. "Can we use this?" Frank asked when Lisa joined them later. She studied the controls, her face lit by the blue glow. "Yes. This technology is advanced, but it follows the same principles. I've been studying. With enough time, I can adapt our device to work with their power source." Over the next 2 days, they learned to control the ship. Lisa worked tirelessly to integrate her frequency device with the cruiser's systems. Others studied the weapons, navigation, and life support systems. Using the captured data core and the ship's communication array, they sent encrypted messages to resistance groups on other worlds. To their surprise and joy, they received responses almost immediately. "There are others fighting back," Lisa told Frank as they reviewed the messages. "Dozens of species on hundreds of worlds. Some have been resisting for generations." Frank studied the star map, where Lisa had marked all the resistance contacts. "They've been kept isolated just like us, made to think they were alone." "Not anymore," Lisa said. "We're sharing the frequency technology with all of them. The Empire won't be able to adapt fast enough if we strike simultaneously." On the 3rd day in orbit, their sensors detected multiple ships entering the system. Valkyrian reinforcements had arrived. 3 cruisers and a command ship, Kevin reported from his newly learned position at the sensor station. Frank looked to Lisa. "Is the integrated system ready?" She nodded. "Untested at this range, but ready." "Then let's test it," Frank said grimly. Lisa activated the device, now powered by the cruiser's reactor. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The approaching Valkyrian ships suddenly slowed, their engines flickering. Their weapons powered down. Communications went silent. "It's working," Lisa exclaimed. "All 4 ships are affected." Frank didn't waste the opportunity. "Bring us alongside the command ship. Prepare boarding teams." What followed was a day of intense fighting as Frank's forces, now confident in their advantage, captured all 4 Valkyrian vessels. With each ship taken, more humans were freed from transport holds and prison sections. Many joined their cause immediately. 2 weeks later, a small fleet of 5 Valkyrian ships, now controlled by humans, left Earth's orbit. Their destination, the nearest subjugated world where resistance forces had made contact. Frank stood on the bridge of the lead ship, now named Defiance, watching Earth grow smaller on the view screen. "Will they be all right?" he asked Diane, who had joined their Space Force as a tactical officer. "The ground forces have captured most Valkyrian bases," she replied. Lisa's technology has spread worldwide. Earth is fighting back everywhere. They'll be fine. Their first stop was a planet called Terrax, home to a reptilian species that had been under Valkyrian rule for over a century. When the human fleet arrived and disabled the orbital defenses, the resistance there rose up and overwhelmed their oppressors within days. From Terrax, they moved to other worlds following the same pattern. Disable Valkyrian technology, arm the local resistance, free the planet, then move on. At each world, some stayed behind to help, while others from that world joined the fleet. 2 years passed. What had begun as 5 ships with human crews grew into a massive liberation fleet of over 100 vessels crewed by dozens of species. Frank commanded the military operations, while Lisa continued to improve the technology that gave them their edge. Word of their successes spread faster than they could travel. Worlds began rising up before they even arrived. The Valkyrian Empire, for the first time in its 1,000-year history, was losing ground. The time has come, Frank told the assembled commanders of the Liberation Fleet. Representatives from 37 species listened as he outlined their boldest plan yet. We've freed nearly 200 worlds, he said, but thousands remain under Imperial control. To end this, we must strike at the heart, the Valkyrian home world. Their intelligence, gathered from captured officers and ships, revealed that the Imperial Palace on the Valkyrian homeworld housed the central command node for their entire empire. It was their greatest strength and greatest weakness. Lisa had been working on a special project for months, a modified version of her device that could trigger a star to emit a precisely tuned solar flare. It won't harm the star, she explained, to the commanders, but it will create an electromagnetic pulse that will render all Valkyrian technology in the system useless for hours. The attack on the Valkyrian home system began with this solar flare. As predicted, it disabled everything in the system. The Liberation Fleet, modified to withstand the pulse, moved in unopposed. Frank led the ground assault on the Imperial Palace. After the battles of the past 2 years, this one seemed almost easy. The Palace Guard, without their technological advantages, fell quickly. In the throne room, they found the Emperor himself, older and smaller than Frank had imagined, surrounded by cowering advisors. You've lost, Frank told him simply. 3 months later, representatives from over 500 worlds gathered in the former Imperial Palace, now converted into the headquarters of the new Galactic Confederation. Each world would have an equal voice. No species would rule over another again. On the observation deck overlooking the gathering, Frank stood with Lisa, watching the historic moment. Did you ever think, when those ships first appeared over Earth, that it would end like this? Lisa asked. Frank shook his head. Never. I just wanted to survive, to help others survive. And instead you freed the galaxy, Lisa said with a smile. Frank looked out at the stars, the same stars that once belonged to the Empire, now shining on free worlds. Not me, he said quietly. All of us. Every person who refused to kneel. Below them, the first session of the Confederation was beginning. A new chapter in galactic history was being written, one where humanity and their allies would never kneel again.